Mel, I want to begin with you. When I saw this film, among the many things that I was struck by is the unbelievable contrast between the innocence of the first hour and the brutality of the second hour. How would you describe the journey that you were wanting to take audiences on with this film?
Well, I imagined a Norman Rockwell painting and then plucking the characters from it and dropping them into a Hieronymus Bosch. And in a way, that's kind of true. The first half is quite different from the second, and I think what must have happened to men who go to war. You know, I don't think you know what to expect from something like that, and it's kind of the death of their innocence, and it's a shock, and so those two things, and Robert will probably tell you when he'll talk more about the structure of his screenplay, but it was pretty obvious on the page what needed to happen. So,
yeah. Well, let me segue right to Robert then. What was important to you in contrasting those two halves?
Well, it's oddly it's a 2-act structure. It's not a standard 3-act, and this is totally driven by the story and by the material. And I think what we all wanted to achieve with the startling difference was to give the audience the visceral experience that the Desmond Doss and his companions in the Liberty Brigade were themselves experiencing. So you kind of set this thing up. It's not entirely bucolic. There's the darkness of his father's violence, the virus of his war experience, and we see it play out in the family. But this sense of place and time and family and all the things that were important to Desmond that made him who he was, and then rocket that into the horror of the Maid escarpment. So it was a very conscious attempt.
Bill, from a production point of view, did you all talk about shooting the one act all at the same time, and then at that point starting on the second act? Were you able to do that? Did you have to intersperse at times?
No, well, there was a before and after. So no, the production schedule we had, I think a total of, we had 42 days first unit and 19 days, I think it was, something like that for second unit. So it's made like an independent film, so we never had enough money to really do it properly, and nobody seemed to care. So, you make do. So the battle stuff was all continuous, but the Lynchburg, Virginia stuff was before and after.
My understanding is that one or more early potential partners of yours on this film were asking for it to be PG-13.
Yeah, this is 15 years. So, a lot of it was being, and again, and they let us out. So that more power to them. I'm not angry about it, but we finally got to. Original budget was done in 2002. That was about the same level of budget of Braveheart was that we did 23 years ago, and we're about half of that now. And so we got the budget down. I'd actually offered, I always thought Mel was the right director, I'd offered Mel the picture twice where he didn't say yes. And so I had another director who we were ready to make it at one point, and we sat down with the financier and they said, it has to be a PG-13, and oh yeah, it has to be a soft PG-13.
Oof.
And I went, I don't know how to make that movie. You're taking the war out of the picture, and if you don't put Desmond Doss in hell, it doesn't have the same effect. So
what
forced it out.
What flipped the switch for you from being a no to a yes?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think, look, you review things, you're ready, there's a time and place for it. I'm not quite sure what it was, but it worked its way into my system somehow, and I was just profoundly moved when I read the screenplay. I was, salty tears on page 58 or something, and I found a way into it, and I think I thought about it a little bit, and it just resonated for me all of a sudden. I'm a bit thick, it takes me a little while.
Andrew, your performance is so spectacular. And what's so fascinating about Desmond Doss is that this guy's demeanor is just unwavering, in his whole life, and also just from moment to moment. It's almost like Forrest Gump in a way, and that just completely unshakable in his foundation. How did you arrive at how you were going to bring that demeanor across?
No, it's a mystery. It's all a mystery to me. And Desmond is a mystery. I think that's one of the beauties of him. How he was able to do what he did and be who he was amidst everyone telling him to be something else. It's the most common struggle we all have in the current culture we're in right now. How do we hold on to our integrity and our core amidst a society telling us to be something opposite? How do you be the salmon swimming upstream? This is the work of our lives, and I'm just incredibly grateful that we got to tell this story now, and that I could be a part of it. I'm glad that it took 15 years. So I'm also terribly sorry, of course. But selfishly, and I think the moment we're in, maybe the world wasn't as hungry for this story of Desmond 15 years ago.
And I think you have to get to where Andrew got to. If Mel Gibson and Andrew Garfield aren't in this movie, it's not the movie. So 15 years is painful, but it's absolutely the right thing.
Yeah. Vince, in some ways, you're totally against type. In some ways, it's playing right into your wheelhouse. How did you envision this part when you first read it, and how exciting was it, the idea of taking it on?
Well, I had never heard of the story. So first I was just really moved by the story. That I had to look it up afterwards. I thought this might feel a little bit stretched here. But then I saw the documentary, and I was just really blown away by what this guy did. And then for the character, which I thought was great, I have a lot of military in my family, and I've gone with the USO quite a bit to both Iraq and Afghanistan, so I know a lot of service people. And it was unique in this war because the sergeant was training the guys that he would take over there. So you really just start from a foundation that you love these kids, and you want them to stay alive, and you take it to be your responsibility. So whatever skills you have to reach them, so a sense of humor sometimes can work if you don't want to drown them out entirely, but you do have to shock them and hopefully get them prepared so that they can go back to their training in the worst case of scenarios where they're trying to stay alive. And then, Andrew did such a beautiful job in those scenes with him, with the shirt and the dignity and the humanity and the strength that he had in those settings. It was very easy to be present with that and see the human being underneath it and feel terrible about the circumstance, and yet at the same time still believe your training that this was a bad fit for him as well as the other guys. So you just sort of go through it.
Kevin, I really do feel like so much of the visceral shock and horror of the extended war scenes is credit to you. And so I'd be curious to know what were your approaches and what was most important for you to get across?
Well, thank you for that, but the reality is I was just one member of a very talented team of sound people that put together what you heard here tonight. The guys down in Australia, Rob McKenzie and Andy Wright, did an amazing job of stepping up to the plate and helping create what you saw here tonight. We took our lead from the actors. The actors were performing at a 10, and we said we need to step up to the plate and honor what these guys are doing here. And also the way that Mel shot it. It for those of you who know about the battle, it was one of the bloodiest battles, if not the bloodiest battle in the Pacific. And the way it's shot, the way it's acted, the way it's the way the camera works, the dialogue, we had to step up to the plate and equal that in sound, and we did our best to try to do that. And if we did, then you felt like you were out there on that battlefield with those guys.
Yeah. Andrew, what's the trick to bringing across the idea of the American South and the accent while you're shooting in Sydney?
And being an English person.
Right.
Yeah. God, what a wonderful thing to be able to attempt. And it kind of employs my left brain, which I don't often get to use. Usually, we were talking about mystery earlier and how the process of absorbing Desmond's essence and attempting to ingest him and then emanate him somehow. That's a totally mysterious process, and I can only say I attempted to do that. I don't know if I achieved it, but I pray that wherever he is, he feels okay about it. That's all I can hope. His son saw the film, and that was a very moving thing for all of us to know that his son was deeply moved by. His son said to me, "I've always loved my dad, but because of seeing how this story's played out, because of what you guys have created, now I respect him." He would never have used that word before for his father because he was always just daddy. So that was, I think, we gave him a gift, which is what more can we hope for this kind of storytelling to transcend merely, making a film. So that's beautiful. So the left brain, I get to use the left brain, I get to use my vocal muscles in a different way, and it's like something tangible that I feel I can hold on to. And in the midst of so much chaos and mystery and terror about what the hell the next step is, or what the hell the next moment will be, or what the hell I'm doing in any moment at all, there was that vocal work for me is something that I really just enjoy working like a muscle. It's almost like one of those stress balls. That's why. So I stay in the accent all the time to not confuse myself mostly, and to not confuse the other actors, and because I think that could be jarring. I imagine it would be for me. So anyway, yeah, it's a wonderful part of the process. I have a great dialect coach called Liz Himmelstein that I work with as well, who's absolutely wonderful. So we compile music, we compile different voices, and we basically try and create a sound, and it's just a lovely part of the process.
Mel, I started with you and I'll end with you as well, because we haven't touched on the concept of faith tonight. And I think that is such an important part of this film. And I'd be curious to know where did that rank as far as the most important things that you wanted to bring across as you were putting it together?
Well, I think the film it's about this man, and very intrinsic to who Desmond was his faith. I mean, this man's faith was so strong, and it inspired me, actually. I mean, I like to think I've got a modicum of faith, but I do not believe I could do what that man did. To crawl into the jaws of hell with no weapon and lay his life on the line over and over again for his brothers. I mean, greater love hath no man. So, it's an undeniable and a necessary component in this story, and an experience that reduces most men to the level of animals. This man goes in and keeps his equilibrium and his convictions and his faith intact, and maybe it's a little shaken around and slapped around, but he manages to sort of grit it out and do it. This is, for me, the main inspiration.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.